people who are going to have to make financial decisions with all this money, bearing in mind China is now the richest country on the planet, they're of the opinion that the United States is not a safe bet at 7 years, so they're not going to buy 7-year notes. They're of the opinion it's not a safe bet at 5, 3, or 2 years. And that they'll right now only bet 1 year, and that past September the odds favor them, or their strategy is they'll drop to 30 and 90-day notes.
So they'll come in, but on their terms, on that basis. 30 and 90-day notes after September.
Because they feel that September will be the denouement or the outbreak of a real derivative crisis that has a lot of them worried. And they think that at that point it may bring the United States to such a state of unsettledness that they can't even really predict beyond 30 days that the government will be intact. And that's their issue. And it makes sense from their viewpoint, citing the data that they had looked at. And I can't say I disagree. This issue of the derivatives, much of which is tied to both interest rates and in another squirrely fashion back to things like soybean crops. Interest rates are not doing well because we're having to buy our own debt. We have hyperinflation that is just built into the system, and everybody knows it's going to break out. The only issue is when. And beyond that, we have a set of conditions that are causing massive crop failures in not only crops like the beans, which really refers to soybeans, but also in new wheat and old wheat crops are affected by this rust that's going around at just breakneck speed all around the planet. So we're about to reach a grains crisis. And a lot of people may say, well, I don't eat cereal or grains aren't that important. But what they have to bear in mind is that that's the absolute rock bottom level of calories upon which our entire food chain is based. So we can get along to a certain extent without food out of the ocean, and that's breaking down as well. There hasn't been a natural oyster spawn on the West Coast in many regions, and also all around the planet now for a number of years. So oysters are dying off, and it's just endemic of everything else, a symptom of everything else that's going on. And so, getting back to the point, the food crisis will occur just about the same time, and is in fact occurring behind the scenes, as is the currency crisis relative to the Chinese. And you notice the dollar took a hit and so on, and all these were temporal markers that we said, well, if this occurs, then this other thing is likely to occur, and so on and so forth. So I'm pretty sanguine that the prediction from about the August breakout in visibility, which is to say it'll hit the media about the derivative crisis, is probably pretty spot on. And we have a window between the 16th and the 22nd, bearing in mind the 22nd is on a weekend, so likely it would be that Friday, which I think is the 21st. In any event, the derivatives crisis is going to spin everything else out of control over the rest of the last waning days of summer and into early fall, such that by October 25th, we reach a pretty serious level of frothing chaos that for 10 days is going to keep us all in quite suspense as to how it's all going to play out, which direction things are going to go. And it, unfortunately, the universe is putting all kinds of other weighted evidence and intelligent speculation behind our forecast, in the sense that we now have people coming out saying, like your previous guest, basically things are going to fall apart after the first part of October and the change of the fiscal year. We also have other respected forecasters like Bob Chapman, who analyzes data in an entirely different way, who's come to the conclusion that we're headed for bank holidays at the end of September, this kind of thing. Now, if those actually occur, we face a path in fall that goes from October 25th through about the 4th or 5th of November and presents us with three large possibilities. And what we may face is a combination of all three. It may be more weighted one way than the other. We just can't really say at this stage. Okay. But it appears that we're going to have to deal with a very severe flu crisis that will spawn a whole series of political problems. That's on one stream. Okay. Then on the other side, we may indeed have the Israelis decide that the economy of the globe has had it, and they might as well attack Iran now, before everything truly falls apart. Because at some point, they're basically being held back now, because if they were to attack, all the markets on the planet would just plummet down to nothing, and we'd have an economic depression that would affect even them. But if we have that depression anyway, they may feel less pressure.
Yeah, sure.
Makes sense?
Of course. The markets? Oh, everything's great.
Yeah, and then we have the other nasty bit, which is the idea that maybe somebody's going to generate a war.
Yeah,
either through a false flag or deliberate attack or so on.
Sure. All right, hold on. I'll be right back. Yes, the Dow Jones at 9,320, up 33 points on the day. Everything's fine, folks. Headed toward 10,000.
Yeah, prosperity.
What are these people smoking? Boy, I just love watching that Dow Jones go up. Just, what's it that, nothing like the smell of the Dow going up in the morning. How does that go? I never mind. 71.56 for crude oil.
Yeah, that gives you a clue there.
Yes, it does.
And the rise in gold, and as much as they're beating it down and attempting to play paper games.
They've held it to 965. They're really working hard.
Yeah.
Let's go over those 3 points again.
We're looking at a mixture, likely, of a disease issue at a severe scale.
Excuse me, but what is the data, Clif? What is the data saying about that? What's the verbiage? Now, there's subjective interpretation, but you know what you're about after all these years, 10 years plus?
We're looking at a combined impact on the order of millions of deaths here in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Now, our real problem is that we have confidence at the higher archetype levels, and usually we discount all numbers that come through simply because the Internet is full of them, unless they happen to make it through our rather torturous processing.
And these numbers do? And these numbers do?
And these numbers do, correct.
Oh, my.
The 2.2 million is the impact over the immediate future. By that might be 6 months, 7 months, beginning probably in November. It really depends. We're not sure, for instance, of a number of things within our forecasting methodology. Mm-hmm. We sometimes get just incredibly accurate hits, and then the same strength and confidence on some different lexical structures that should have that same level of accuracy fail to materialize. Basically, it's we don't know why. There are some indications that the future is fluid, and of course we all know that the events are sort of all strung together, and if something doesn't happen, then other things don't happen, so to speak. So, but nonetheless, we do get these numbers that come through that suggest that the flu is going to just be vicious, but also that the vaccine issue is going to be vicious, and then even beyond that, there's going to be political ramifications around the vaccine issue that are going to feed right into the whole revolution meme that we see going on, especially if you go and watch YouTube. You now see the town hall meetings, and everybody's really irate at Congress people, and these Congress critters, tree varmints, have to have big security guys out there in front of them just keep themselves safe while they come and mouth their platitudes to us from their bosses. So that's going to escalate, and that'll really escalate around the issue of the, quote, mandatory vaccines. The idea of people being forced into it, though, we need to really control our fear language around this and understand that.
Thank you.
That we don't want to be fearful. We want to be aware and protective, or however you want to think about it, aware and wary, perhaps. But there's a lot of fear-mongering going on that need not be listened to. The idea that someone's going to come around with a gun and say, take this shot, or get shot, is rather absurd. It would take huge numbers of people that just don't exist that would be willing to do the shooting, so to speak, right? So when they say mandatory vaccines, you have to understand that there is going to be some level of, quote, penalty if you don't, but that really the penalty they're trying to engineer is this fear in your mind. And the penalties that are offered by the WHO organization, which is what caused the United States and all these other countries to, quote, have to mandate the entire population be vaccinated, their penalties have a tendency to go towards ostracism more than anything else. In other words, your kid can't come to school if he's not vaccinated, or you can't go to the post office, or, cash your security check or something.
It'll end up being a quasi-quarantine or something like that in most cases.
I don't think so. I actually don't think it'll play out that way.
Okay, good.
The reason I think that is...
They passed that EO and April 1st of 2005 gave them the full right to quarantine anybody, anywhere, anytime.
I understand this. But again, it comes down to manpower. Physical humans willing to get out and do the work, understanding it and so on, and being able to be effective at it.
And they're going to get sick, too, and they're going to be afraid, and all those aren't going to want to report to work.
Correct. And if you think that the level of paranoia about the vaccine is at X level in the general population, you really need to understand that it's several times X level in the, quote, law enforcement profession.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these people read conspiracy boards. They know what's going on. They're not idiots.
Sure.
And they understand that they're on the first line, so to speak, so they'll be vaccinated first.
Yeah.
Now, the powers that be may be working on bait-and-switch kind of a deal and putting in relatively innocuous vaccines in the early group so that everybody feels good.
Could give them all saline.
There you go, exactly. They don't do the vaccines, by and large, don't do much in any event. Right. And the idea that the regular flu vaccine has ever either reduced the amount of intensity of the flu or saved people from dying is statistically proven incorrect.
It's unprovable that it's of a benefit, and every year they put allegedly three different strains that they guess in the vaccine. Who the hell knows? Nobody knows.
It's a gamble at that stage anyway, yeah. Or you could be bit by one of those three particular bugs when there's dozens of other varieties out there.
It's absurd. It's totally absurd.
But there's a lot of fear language, and they're trying to use it, again, as a strategy of manipulation. Mm-hmm. And our data shows that it's going to backfire, that it's going to just have piled on the last little bit along with all the economic problems we're going to hit. If you think that the economy is bad now, wait a few months. I think we're actually at a provable 25% unemployment. And another component of this, by the way, is that by December thereabout, maybe January at the latest, no USA issued government figure will be accepted on the planet by anybody for anything, because it'll have been so proven wrong and so much of a lie with all the hedonic measurements and all this kind of stuff that we're just going to basically abandon American as any form of standards of accuracy in any number anywhere. So this is sort of good, but to get there, we've got to go through a really rough time, and the economics are going to set us all up, and then the other stuff piles onto us. Now, there's even rumors coming out of Congress that some of the more astute humans that are within that pile of tree varmints are saying that things are so out of whack, another false flag is almost inevitable.